Yeah, yeah.
Okay, welcome, y'all. We're still celebrating the life and times and the continual spiritual life of Zim Nakwana, the South African jazz musician, activist, artist, and Malopo healer. Okay, so what we want to say is that right now we're focusing on Malopo music, Malombo. We've talked about Tabane and other artists. So I'm going to start with you, Lerato Kuzwayo, who's in Pretoria. Very quickly, I think there's Malopo, according to you, and I would agree, is it's a sort of a healing ritual within music and art. But I think that, and it involves improvisation. But I think that we may have those types of things in different cultures. But I think that for it to be really Malopo, it has to be a certain type of vision that the South African brings with their whole ethno history migrating from Congo and their experiences, so that not just any type of musical improvisation, even if it's healing, is Malopo. What do you think? Yeah. You might have a broader, more humane view than I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man, it's I I think to sort of like track back to how we got here. It's like trying to define how South African spiritual jazz um had
It's
developed
hidden
to
in the
the
midst
point
of
where
time.
Zim was able to pick,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to pick it up and take it to where he took it,
Yeah.
and also then just thinking about where we are now. So Malopo becomes the sort of like a direction, where
Yeah.
we can look at and point to and say there was this point in history where things happened in a particular way,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I
I,
think um,
Let
and,
me use a
and
broader
I
word
think
also,
from
not
from
just
some.
South Africa, but also coming out of Southern Africa. Because when I listen to Oliver Mtukudzi, I still hear some things in him that I also hear and generally in Southern Africa in the music. I'm not saying that that's Malopo, but there's a certain sort of
Yeah,
way that the guitar is played. So it's a Southern Africa thing. Continue, sorry.
yeah, no,
Southern African
it,
migrant
it,
thing.
it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it would be connected because if we were to take it back a millennium, um, we would be talking about Mapungubwe, right? And the confluence of that space as a space of confluence where the river crosses today. It crosses the three boundaries of Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, Limpopo,
Yeah.
right?
Very quickly, it kind
So
of
so
reminds
so
me of
that
like
so that
rivers that
that
cross in the U.S. with the blues, but that'll be a story for another day. Continue. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
sure. It possibly also has those similar tones.
Yeah.
But that space of exchange brings together, you know, a, a kind of a central space where there would have been some kind of like trade routes, diplomatic exchange, and things like that between the communities that live
Yeah.
in and around that river, right?
Yeah.
Where you also had the Great Zimbabwe not so far
Mona
away
Matapa.
from Mapungubwe itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so
And very quickly, I want to also
so
add
so
that,
so the
and
sou-
as
the
you have,
south.
sorry, so as you have that confluence interchangeable areas, you also have a gradient. Whereas, like, okay, next door to South Africa, like for example, I'm just giving an example. You have the Shona people, and 1 minute now you're in South Africa, now you're in Zimbabwe. So there's also a connection to by degrees, just in the spectrum of distance from each other, but there's still a connection because it's still within a region. Yeah, continue. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. There is that connection. There are also sort of like linguistic connections that you can pick up.
Yeah. Much
Even though
stronger
it's
because
the language.
In Nigeria, the Igbo and Yoruba they have no roots or Hausa. So it seems like there's more fluidity with the language in that southern area. They have the same root, you know. But yeah, continue. Sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's sort of like those same roots where you hear the same the same tonation, the same phonetic, even though
Yeah.
the language are not similar, but there's like a phonetic thing
Yeah,
between Chivenda um and Shona, and
yeah,
um which sounds sonically the same, even though
yeah,
the meanings may not be,
yeah.
may not be
But I would
similar.
think that the connection is stronger within those languages than it is within the Latin languages like French, Spanish, and Portugal, which are very close. Not they may have some variations in meaning of the words, but when you take them down to their etymology, some of the words are very similar, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it's closer within the area you're talking about than it is within Spain, France, and Italian. But one thing I know, if you can speak Italian very well, you'll pick up Spanish or French very quickly. Yeah, continue.
Very
Same type of
quickly.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
No, sure, no, sure.
yeah,
So yeah, so I mean, we sort of then the point of departing from Malopo is to take it back that far, right? And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
and that's the idea. Although the idea of a spiritual jazz had been sort of ruminating even before the
yeah,
Malombo moment. It's just that the Malombo moment is significant in that it points us to that point in history.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you had I think
Would you
it
root
would have
Malumbo as
been the
starting in the
year.
60s? Did it start in the 60s, Malumbo?
Yeah, it was that 1960, was it 63
Yeah, okay, so continue. Yeah.
um jazz concert. Yeah,
Yeah.
when they did when they won the jazz competition,
Yeah, and I
and
saw
then
that
they
video and I couldn't
then
believe it when I saw
recorded.
Tabane was there, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, so
So
continue.
so
Like I said, we never know what routes we're gonna go on this show. This is some beautiful theory. Continue. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that win sort of brought them, um uh to notoriety,
yeah,
um and then we go from there, and then we see the development um of jazz as a whole, or even the development of Black consciousness
yeah,
as
yeah.
a whole. um
Concurrently with a cosmic movement within music, which comes later in the late 60s, where Indian music starts to come in, and then world music emerges from the whole thing. Continue. Sorry.
yeah. There's a lot that happens in the 60s,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
It
it,
was that
it was it
acid.
was
It was acid and mushrooms. I'm serious. I'm serious. Continue. I
yeah.
think I'm serious. I'm not being funny. Acid and mushrooms.
Sure, sure,
Continue.
sure,
Sorry.
sure, sure, sure. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, the idea of psychedelics or
Yeah.
natural healing herbs
Yeah.
coming into play, sort of. Oh yeah, the jazz festival was in 64. It was in
Yeah.
64. Um, and I think also the Blue Notes might have been a part of that, or they might have been a
Yeah.
part of the 63 jazz festival.
Yeah. And very quickly
With
to add to it, very quickly,
Chris
going with your
McGregor.
point, I'm not trying to interrupt, but with the Blue Note, now you've got a guy like McGregor, who's a pianist, who's African and European, and definitely he's been exposed to some of those things, and also some other South Africans who went to Germany and other parts. So now we're seeing cross a confluence of different cultures and things. Also, sorry, continue, because McGregor was the one with the Blue Notes, right? Yeah, yeah.
Sure, sure,
Yeah, yeah. So
sure.
continue. I think he's
Um,
a very important figure in South African music. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I mean the blue notes are very important
Yeah,
in this instance, because um, they sort of bring together um, a sound, and then they take the sound out of the country when they travel to Europe.
yeah,
Um, and this is why I think in a lot of the things
yeah.
that we were sort of exchanging
Sorry to jump in one more
yesterday. We
time.
were
Hence,
thinking a lot
hence
about
Farrah Sanders' song called it was named after a South African. Farrah Sanders' album where he plays, and
Tembi,
it has a South African title.
Tembi.
Yeah, so you
came.
now see that that's what was going on. Continue.
Yeah, yeah. Then those connections start to be more visible.
Yeah.
When you listen to Johnny Gianni's interview
Yeah.
that he did with Kaganoff, the forest and the zoo,
Ah,
he
taking
talks
off,
about
man. This guy
how
gets the best people on his. He gets. I'm jealous of him
yeah,
because
yeah,
he was
no,
there
no, no.
with
He
Zim.
really spoke to very important people.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I need to text him because I published something on one of his books. I need to text him just to tell me about those stories. Like, when you talk to your grandpa, say, tell me about things because before you pass away, I won't know it. It will be lost to me. Yeah, that type of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but Johnny Gianni speaks about how when they were playing in London, um, all these guys were coming to see them and to check them out. I
Yeah.
think Ornette Coleman went there to check them out,
I was gonna say something.
and
Sorry to cut in front of you. I was listening to the music
mm,
last night and I connected it with Coleman. So I connected
yeah,
it. But what makes me angry is that none of these musicians ever quotes these guys from South Africa and shows the contribution that the music has made. But whereas someone like a Coltrane will say, "Oh, I listened to Coleman or Net Coleman, and it changed my conception of music." That's what Coltrane said. So I'm just kind of angry
yeah,
that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ornette Coleman did mention South African musicians and things, but I think it's not the problem of Ornette Coleman. It's the problem of music history and how it's taught in universities where they don't make these connections to
yeah,
show
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sort of like cross pollination
Yeah.
is something that happened in some instances very organically,
Yeah.
because
Without
people would
being
have
able
been
to make connections. Yeah. I see what you're
yeah
saying. Yeah.
people would have been within the same
Yeah.
spaces, listening
Yeah.
to each other and doing
Sorry, I have
doing
a
work
very
with each
one quick
other.
detour. So to me, one of the greatest drummers in jazz ever, with I can't remember his name now. He was with John Coltrane. John Coltrane's drummer. This is Elvin Jones. If I can't
Elvin
remember Elvin Jones,
Jones.
you need to shoot me in the head. Elvin Jones came to Coltrane and said, "Yo, I'm just gonna speak how he said, yo, motherfucker, listen to this fucking shit." He showed them polyrhythms from Congo. Elvin Jones did that, and within 3 months, he was doing polyrhythms, and hence the polyrhythms became popular because I don't want to say he invented it, became popular in jazz because of Elvin Jones. He came to Coltrane with a stack of records and said, listen to this. And it was the
Yeah,
polyrhythms.
yeah,
And when we're going to go back to Malopo, it's not only polyrhythms, it's polytones, polytextures, and you can't isolate. In African music, you can't isolate rhythm and melody and all those things. Because that's why they call it mellow rhythm or mellow. Because once you isolate one thing, because the melody influences the rhythm, but the rhythm influences the melody. It's an emotional rhythm. It's an emotion. I said rhythm. It's an emotional impetus. So you can't isolate them in parts. So I just call it. You can call it polytonal or whatever. But I think polyrhythm means polytones, rhythm, textures, and everything in one go. Continue. Sorry.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to. I don't want you to lose your space because you were talking about how everything developed organically and how South Africa influenced music.
Yeah,
Continue.
no,
Sorry.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just highlighting that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
sort of development
Yeah.
of almost like almost like also a circular connection, a circular
Yeah.
network.
Yeah.
Because when Zim then spends time in the States, he spends time with Yusuf Lateef, and he's
Yeah. Yeah.
influenced by Yusuf Lateef, who was influenced by the Eastern music, and
Hmm.
there is kind of like a circularity around the sound.
Yeah. And he
Um,
was also influenced a little bit by that jazz. I can't remember the guy's name, but that played saxophone with Coltrane and Love Supreme. I can't remember the guy's name, but that guy toured at Durban too, or he came to South Africa. I'll remember his name in a minute. He has an album
yeah,
called Juju. Juju. Yeah. Well, I'll continue. I'm going to find the guy's name. Continue. Okay.
yeah. So yeah. So then there's all these aspects that sort of coalesce around the time and space where Black consciousness becomes uh, an important sort of political position
Hmm.
or liberation position that Black people were taking. Also, globally, I mean, you have different countries getting their independence. You have the Black Panther Party being formed in the states after MLK and Malcolm X are assassinated.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, and then you have
Not to
all
be
those things.
confused with Donald Trump. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no,
Sorry,
no.
sorry.
I realized
Sorry.
when I said that word that I might have triggered something
Oh yeah, sorry, but this world is crazy, but continue. Yeah,
in
continue.
the in the
Sorry.
in the new in the new space today.
Yeah.
But yeah, but um yeah. So now all these things sort of come together. But then I
Oh,
think
sorry, Archie Shep. Archie Shep had influence on
with
Zim.
with
Zim
Archie
also.
Shepp.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Continue, continue. Yeah,
Yeah. So all these things sort of come together, and then I think what what I had been saying to you is that what is also not often spoken about is the visual aspect
yeah, yeah,
of the spiritual work,
yeah,
that had been happening on the ground, and also because I suppose the um, the visual arts were a little bit easier to silence than the music.
yeah. But so yeah,
Or,
you have
or
to
to
make them very dynamic and complex to have the same effect as the music. Yeah, yeah.
no, well, I'm not talking about the lack of complexity or
No, but
dynamism
I
because
think
it's
it's the expressivity though. The expressivity is the
yeah,
problem, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
but I
think I
think
think
through dynamics and color, you can yeah, complexity, you're right. So it's not complexity, but you have to have a lot of factors come into play to bring out the expression. Yeah. But I think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
South
I
African
think
poetry, no,
we're
South
looking.
African visual arts tends to seem have qualities with the sonic because it seems in motion and what it does with color and things can be substituted for melody and tone. But yeah, continue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me just share this
Yeah.
on the screen.
Okay.
Um, can you see that?
Uh, let me see. Uh, let me press. So you shared it already, but I don't see anything. I'm trying. I don't know how to use Zoom too well. You might have to. I have to. So what? So what are you showing me actually?
Let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see.
Do I have to press share here? No.
Okay, cool. There we go. There we go.
Okay. Wow. You need to be the producer of our shows from now on because I don't know how to do all this
You,
stuff
I think
yet.
you can see it now.
It's loading up. It's uploading. So while it's uploading, after we talk about the visual, we're gonna now focus a little bit on Gianni. Yeah. After let's go. Oh wow. Yeah. So that's exactly what I'm talking
Yeah,
about. That picture is fluid and it has it's
one
moving.
of Figula's speaking
Yeah.
about motion.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
music.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
you have the hand in the middle, and then you have
There's
the
that
moon.
motion. There's that fluidity.
Yeah. But then there's other things like texture, and then there's other symbols like the hand in the
There's
middle
this.
that's playing the piano, then the moon on the left. So it's this is a composition which is very much like a musical composition. But even this one is
Yeah,
made very clear because you have
there's
the
that.
piano. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that sonic quality to it and
Yeah.
whatnot. And what I was saying about it being easy to silence is because it was easy to erase,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, uh, as opposed to music. Music could be sort of transposed very easily. It
Yeah.
could be played live, and people would
Yeah.
remember it, and they would carry on singing the songs.
Yeah, but I do think that the
Um,
advantage that painting has
if
though is that it takes the image, it takes the motifs more, and they are more imprinted in your head. Whereas with music, you can just treat it as aesthetic, and sometimes we can fall into the pattern of even deep music like Malombo. We just treat it as an aesthetic thing. But with painting, you're forced to engage it at another level. But also, a good person who knows how to listen to music engages it very critically too. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So I
Oh
mean, I
wow,
mean,
this
these
is great. Who is this? Whose artwork is this? Yeah.
this one is Heri Moyaga.
Okay, wow. And to me, this actually
And
represents this is what I hear when I hear some, especially some of the darker songs that we can call to Malopo, more like even before Malopo, like sort of like ritualistic trance, not trance, but dark healing music, which always involves darkness with color and with hope and with also a sense of doom. It
yeah,
has
yeah,
everything
yeah.
in it. Continue. Yeah.
And there's a language here within the symbols. if you know how to read it.
Oh yeah, and also I see something. So for example, at the bottom, this looks like a rake, like you know the what the woman is standing on. But if you look at the
Yeah,
circle at the
yeah,
top, it has those same lines. The circle at the top with the orange, the circle that has
yeah, yeah,
orange,
yeah.
those lines,
If
those are similar symbols. But also it looks sort of like a amniotic, the middle part where there's the green, and she's giving birth. So that's kind of like water
yeah,
also.
that
Yeah,
is a woman giving birth,
yeah,
and this the sign here of like the sun
yeah,
depicts a future. Um, like
yeah.
it's like yeah,
Well,
these
it's
are some
chaos.
of
It's
the
chaos.
symbols that
It's
yeah,
chaos,
these
but
are
it's
some
more
of the
than chaos. More than chaos, also. And whoever did. So, what's the name of
it's
the guy who
more
did this painting? Um,
Herimuyaha.
yeah.
It's
What I
less
was going to say,
chaos
Harry
and
Muyaha. This painting that he
yeah,
did,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
actually
less
a
chaos
spirit
and it's more like dreamscape.
dreamscape. What I was about to say is that what he's actually doing is that he didn't compose this. This was given to him in a dream, and he just presented it to us. Continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the one sort of profile that you read of his states there that what he used to do is that he would meditate before he did a work, and then like
Yeah.
once he's in that meditative state, then he will start to create. He doesn't create
Yeah.
unless he's in that meditative
I have
space,
that same
right?
problem with my
So
poems. Sometimes they seem too analytical, so I said just leave it alone. Think about it. Lay down on the couch. I wake up, sleep, to have dreams, and then re-engage it again. Continue. Sorry. Yeah. Oh wow. Is this
yeah,
by him
yeah, yeah.
also? Yeah.
This is also Hirimuyaha. So I'm just like these are some of the images that I gathered that
Yeah, and it's
it's
funny because
mostly is
before we started this meeting, I was like, "You're going to show me some of the ways the visual can do it," and you had already
yeah,
anticipated.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
On a side note, I think it's
How
more difficult. It's more difficult if you just take photography without altering it. Like if you just take your camera and take an image, it's more difficult to now do
yeah,
these
yeah.
type
I
of things.
think
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
think there are some images that sort of speak to that.
Yeah.
Uh,
You
that
just have to
that's
have a good
that,
eye. You have to have a good eye and identify those patterns and symbols in your environment and just snap. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, that sort of get into that spiritual essence.
Yeah.
Um, and this is another print of Hirimu as well.
Hmm.
So there are photographers that I think have achieved that. I think you when you were speaking with Rez mentioned Santu Mofuke.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We'll look at that. Yeah.
yeah, I'll try and get some of his images.
Oh, and by the way,
And
this is going to be a multi series because this is going to take time. We're going to do this again on Wednesday in the evening if you're free. But continue. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's why I'm saying I'll get some of
Yeah,
his
because football is over now, so now we can focus on our culture.
yeah,
Continue.
yeah,
So
yeah.
who is this? Yeah.
So, so this is Heri Moyaga. This is a
Yeah,
profile
yeah,
image of
yeah.
Heri Moyaga.
He's
So
a
yeah, I think
prodigy. Yeah.
yeah,
He's a
man.
wizard. He's a wizard. You can even look at him and
Yeah, yeah,
tell.
yeah.
Yeah.
So those are some of. I mean, this is just one artist, but he worked very closely with Figile Makadlela, who we spoke about previously.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, all these guys were part of a single community. Him, Motlhabane Mashiangwako as well, Dumile Feni, who we also spoke about
Yeah.
during the
So
the
so
first
let's
conversation.
pivot here. So it's pivoting because you're now relating him to people, and also we have guys like Lafifi. And one constant between all of them and Zim is that they have different artistic um fields, but it seems they all converge onto this Malopo and Malombo and what I would just
Yes,
basically call it Southern African ritualistic symbolic expressivist
exactly.
aesthetic.
Yes,
But they come from different fields, but all of them are also politically what's the word, radicalized, because and this is part of it, all of this ritual space stuff is supposed to be healing from trauma from political and social and spiritual oppression. So that's what, so to
it's
me
all black
the
consciousness.
activist is not just the person who walks on the street and says vote or don't vote or do this. The activist should really be seen as a healer who's trying to
Yeah,
bring and mend the community. So let's, and from that point we can now jump to um what's his name? Gideon Malo. Is that how do you pronounce the last name? Yeah.
Oh, Gideon Malo, yeah, Gideon Malo.
Malo. So yeah, same thing. He was radicalized, but he has a music background. So he plays the marimba and the organs, but he has a musical background also,
Yeah,
and very influential, and other guys. Then we can look at Diani. So I want to talk about Diani. When I hear Diani's music, especially some of his albums like the Witch Doctor's Daughter and some of the ones you sent to me, the Witch Doctor's Son. Sorry, I have a novel called The Witch Doctor's
yeah,
Daughter. That's right. He does something in his music in which you start hearing echoes and everything, and the rest of the music falls apart. And it sounds like now you're in a dark hall, which is a dream space, in which you can only hear people talking to each other, clicking and talking and echoing. It sounds like the Congo rainforest. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
Yeah. And to me, what he has done is with him and with some of the music he did with McGregor and other guys, they go into this the music and everything, and then they reach a point where everything becomes quiet, and all you can hear is the voices, and there's call and response, and you realize that even though it's different voices of different people, it's more of like a polyphony of one spirit that's in communication with itself, and it talks about what you were talking about. It's the ultimate dream space, and I think Diani does it better than anyone I've seen. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
there's too many things I want to say about him, so let's have you address that part first. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the thing,
And also that goes
actually, that,
to me by listening to that, I can tell intuitively that goes back to the rainforest in Congo with what we call what people like to call pygmies, which is a derogative term, but it comes from there.
yeah,
And we have to remember that Southern Africans come from that area, and they brought all types of conflicts and psychic power and musical gifts that you can hear in the music in South Africa. Could continue. You don't hear it in West Africa. West African music sounds more like Arabic, which makes me think that the Arabic wiped out whatever our indigenous music was. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think then, when we mention Gideon, I think I'm gonna share again
Yeah.
something here that
Very quickly, you know,
maybe
it's going to take us about 23 episodes to unpack everything that we have to talk about. But that's
yeah,
good.
it's it's
That's
it's
good because it means that
it's
we have something to do. We don't have writer's block.
we
I'm using the word writer's block, but what I'm saying is there's no lack of things to talk about. Yeah. And to
sure,
unpack.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the first album. This is Gideon Plays, and this becomes sort of like the first one
Yeah. So very quickly, I listened
that
to it.
comes out with it.
Very quickly, I listened to it.
Hmm?
He was playing the organs. It sounded a lot of like,
Sure.
like the organist, Jimmy Smith. He was really like comping and very bouncy. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is influenced by Lesotho mainly, because I think Gideon lived in Lesotho, and he was sort of borrowing from the idioms of Basotho,
Yeah.
who
So
live
you're talking about the
in.
music or the image? Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the music. I'm
Oh yeah,
talking
okay.
about
Yeah,
the
I just
music.
wanted to be sure. Okay, continue. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very lively
But
and
but,
bouncy.
but
It
it's
almost
the
feels
same.
like church music in America, which is very highly elevated. Yeah, continue. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the same spiritual element, just like
yeah,
drawn from
yeah,
Basotho. But this is the one of the first times that we see an artwork that makes it on the cover of a jazz album. So this
yeah.
interaction, I think Gideon is one of the first few people that did this a lot.
Who did the artwork?
But I think this is Dumile's work.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This is
And
Dumile
you know,
Fela.
I have to speak about Jamila because when I first saw him, I saw his darker works, which were like almost hopeless, like Black Death. But now I've looked more of his art. He's also a spectrum. He's a chameleon. Sometimes he can show you hope, and sometimes he can show you total despair. Probably because I think he suffered depression too. But what I notice about him is no matter how much hope he shows you, there's still an element of cynicism in his work. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Continue. Yeah. Sorry, sorry. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, for sure.
Yeah.
So then you start to see these kinds of artworks
Also, you've done a very good
that
job in
that
connecting these
make it.
different artworks. Are these by the same person or different people? Yeah, they're all by Jamila
Yeah,
Edna.
this is also this. No, no, no. They're not all by the same person. I'm not sure who this
But
one
but
is
but
by.
yeah.
I
So
have
the
to
point I
find
was
out.
making is that they may be by different people, but you can see they're part of the same movement, same motifs, same type of
Exactly.
symbols. So it's a community of people who have
But this
connected
is,
and internalized each other's aesthetic. But no, it's one, not each other's aesthetic. They've internalized their aesthetic. It's one aesthetic. Continue. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So this is another of Gideon Malo's covers. But maybe on the next time we'll sort of like do like a lot of covers, album
yeah.
covers
I
that
want to take time
visually
to tell
sort
you,
of
thank you, man.
communicate.
You're like a social
Yeah,
you're a social infrastructure. You know what I'm saying? You're like something that's good for our society because you've done a lot of work and made a lot of connections.
yeah,
That
yeah, yeah. But
so
this is
yeah,
then
yeah,
where you see how Black consciousness was
yeah,
sort of like a consolidated movement
yeah,
on the cultural front,
yeah.
you know.
I'm
Um,
with you. I'm with you now. I can tell you that much. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then maybe when we look at the covers, then I'll also collect some of the photographs. So we'll speak about some of the
Yeah.
photographers.
Yeah. So very quickly, I'm
But
going
I
to leave
think,
everything to you now, but I want to make one small divergence. One thing I noticed about Malopo is that no matter what instrument you play, they all start sounding
yeah,
like they're the same thing. Somebody's playing the bass, somebody's singing. And out here with the bass, like when Diani plays the bass, it's very textural
sure,
and you can hear each string. And sometimes he makes the string sound narrow and rigid. Then he
yeah,
makes it sound like a wave of sound, like it's five or six strings. But when he sings, he does the same thing with his vocal cords. Then the musician on
mhm,
the piano starts to, because the piano has strings too, starts to use the same texture and everything. And to me, that is actually the highest level of spiritual alchemy in music where every instrument starts sounding the same. A piano starts sounding like a bass guitar, and a bass guitar sounds like a smaller guitar, and the human voice sounds like it's somewhere in between. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Can you
sure,
speak
sure.
quickly to that, and then go back to what you were talking about before? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think I was coming a little bit more towards this idea of how the Blue Notes then brought about this expression that we find in Johnny Gianni, right? And Johnny Gianni sort of uh, picks up picks up the same isiXhosa idiom, you know,
Yeah.
because he was from the Cape. And actually, I think in maybe some of the music where you're mentioning the pianist, he may have been playing with Abdullah Ibrahim because he played with him a lot.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and
And I've
and the
heard those
drama,
elements in Abdullah Ibrahim's music, and it's sort of like a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
beautiful textures and sheets of sound and things. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And often the drama would be Bralui Moholo, also based in
Yeah.
Cape Town now.
He's still alive.
Um,
Yeah, he's still alive. Yeah. God
yes,
bless him
yeah,
for
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. He's based in Cape Town, and then there's um in terms of then the photographic element, there's the documentary photography element, which is not so much, this idea of trying to depict the spiritual aspect, but just like capturing these beings,
Yeah.
which George Hallett did. I think I mentioned to you George
Yeah.
Hallett yesterday.
Yeah.
um he's the one who took that image by the one with Pralui
Yeah, but very
Moholo.
quickly, I
And
think when you take the image, it shines out from those beings themselves, like the one that Kaganov did with Zim, the one you showed me, Vandalism. When you see him playing the instrument, you now see a glow, sort of like a saintly glow coming from him. Continue. Sorry.
of course, it, it
Yeah.
it becomes it becomes something important,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm just kind of like making an honorable note that actually, um George Hallett is someone to really look at
Yeah, Holly, you
as
sent
a
me his stuff.
document.
He's a photographer. Yeah, so I want to go deeper into
Yeah,
him because I
yeah,
didn't get to look at his images, but and he was also intersectional. He met with a lot of these people in Europe. He
yeah.
inter
As a documentary resource, he's very resourceful in
Yeah,
terms of telling you where these people were, by where he was, and what it is
yeah,
that they were doing.
yeah.
So I used him a lot in some of the research
So
that I'm
he's
doing.
basically one of the soldiers in the field of Black consciousness. That's why. And when we say soldier,
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
of us,
No, for
even
sure.
us, I don't know as much as you do and stuff, but we're all actually bringing together our resources to continue a body of knowledge. That's
to
very important
yeah, yeah, yeah,
for the
to sort of
survival of our people.
project
Yeah,
it,
continue.
to
Yeah,
sort of project it forward. I mean, he did a lot of important work, including a lot of the portraits on the African writer series on the books
yeah. Mhm.
were commissioned and done by him.
Is he in Cape Town? Next time I'm in South Africa, I got to go visit him, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have
No,
to.
I think he's late now. I think he passed
Oh,
away in
he passed
2020.
away. Okay. Yeah. And this goes
Yeah,
back to what
yeah,
I was
yeah.
saying. We have to continue this and meet up with some of these people because I'll use the example of my dad. My dad is 80. He still has good health. But I keep telling myself
Sure.
I need to ask my dad questions about when I was young and before I was born and what was going on because the old African saying when an elder dies is like losing 10 million
It's like a
libraries.
library burning. Yeah,
Yeah. I call
for
it 10
sure.
million libraries burning. Continue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so I mean, you can hear clearly in Johnny Gianni's music that there is this spiritual thing um, that also leads us um, to some of the techniques and some of the sounds
Yeah.
that you find also in Zymology and Vadzimu and all those
Yes.
things.
Yeah,
When
you've
when
connected
Zim
it
is
because when I
doing that
heard
thing
them,
with
yeah.
his lips,
Yeah.
it just goes blah, 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 you know.
And some of
Um,
the other things like as a song, "Ebu Philo," when everybody's clapping and things like this. Why
yeah,
I heard one Johnny song where people go, ooh, ooh, you know, when they do that sound from the bottom of their throat, ooh, ooh, and everything is quiet and people are
yeah,
responding. It sounds like a duck or an animal, ooh, ooh, and all those types of sounds. I hear it in Zim's music. So what Zim is doing is because I thought it was Zim as a genius. He's created a new folk music based on similar South African music, but I didn't realize that what he's doing is translating what his cultural heritage and what he's heard before. Sorry, continue. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So this is what these guys were doing um, throughout from Malombo, from the Blue Notes,
yeah,
all the way to Johnny Gianni, all the way
yeah,
to what Ayanda Sikade
yeah.
and Tuzo Makatini are doing today.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Macatini. So Macatini, his music is a lot more orchestral. No, he's still doing the same thing, but he doesn't accentuate. In other words, he's very balanced. He doesn't accentuate one element of the music. So like kind of like Coltrane. Coltrane is a little bit intense. Diani has everything in a middle ground, and it's like a, and also Diani, not Diani. I mean, what's his name? McKay, the guy, the pianist, the one who's with Blue Note now. What's you just mentioned him a second ago?
McGregor,
No, the one you just mentioned now,
McGregor,
Mtakazi. What's his name? Mtakazi.
or Abdullah Ibrahim or Makatini.
Makatini. What I was saying about the Makatini is that he's very formal and measured. I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but what I'm trying to say, he doesn't play hot music. He doesn't like over accentuate the passion and the emotion. It's almost like his music reminds me a little bit of Alice Coltrane when she plays the harp. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there is
And to me, he's the most important person since Zim passed away. Maybe I'm
that
wrong, but yeah, he's the most
that
important since Zim
meditative
passed away.
element. Yeah, I try to sort of shy away from, and I know he also does,
Yeah.
um, of like being like centralist.
Yeah, he's not
Um,
sensitive, but what I will say is
yeah,
that yeah, because he's getting a lot of press. But what I see him doing
for
when I
sure, for
listen to his
sure.
music, I can tell that he's committed to the spiritual movement. Because someone told me, I think it was Rez and I came to the agreement that jazz South African jazz is spiritual improvisation, and he told me that what's his name? I don't want to say what's his name again. The one that you
Nduduzo,
said that he's not into central.
Nduduzo, Makatini,
Intutuzo.
yeah,
He
Nduduzo.
said Intutuzo said what we're playing is not jazz, it's spiritual improvisation. So I can see that I can see that he's devoted to a very spiritual movement and expression. Sorry, continue. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, always also I think this brings me to the point also that, like, when you sort of broaden the scope, when you think about Zim, you must think about Andile Yenana, um
Oh, yeah, I was gonna
and
say Yanana. See, Yanana is his pianist.
and
Funny
Brahidi
story.
Twayedi.
When I lived in Cape Town, I lived in the same apartment that he lived in, but he wasn't there anymore. I was in his room, like you know those small places in
Sure.
UCT in observatory. Yeah, but the thing about Yanana, so speak to him because I know that Yanana is a brilliant pianist. tell me more about his activist and his theoretical roots. Because I always had the image that he's just sort of like a side man. Because they always put him on the side and talk about Zim. You get my point. But continue. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think this is why I'm trying to sort of break away from the centralist thing, because there's this, it's like a pluriverse,
Yeah. And
of
there's also sorry.
minds.
There's also another pianist, Africa something. He's also
Africa Mkhize, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Africa Mkhize is kind of like, is someone that comes somewhere in terms of piano. He comes somewhere in between Andile Nana
And it's funny
and
because
Dukuzo
I'm glad you
Makatini, like
said that because
generationally
I'm
speaking.
glad you said that because sometimes when I hear him play, even the way he plays, it reminds me of Yanana, and I was like, these guys are similar. So you're validating what my intuition was because you now
Yeah,
place them
yeah.
in
So,
between.
so
Yeah,
they kind of
yeah,
like they follow each other, and perhaps also that's how they follow each other in my mind, because that's how I learned about them. Like I
yeah,
learned
yeah.
about Andile and Nana, and then I learned about Africa Mkhize, and then I
I
learned
suspect they're
about,
part of the same archetype. That's the way I'll say it. But continue with your thoughts
yeah,
on Yanana because you wanted to say something very important about him. Continue.
yeah. No, I'm saying, like, when we sort of decentralize,
Yeah,
and go into this hive mind concept, which actually is what is the basis of Malopo. It's like a communal consciousness
yes, it's
kind of
communal,
approach,
and it's
because
it's very chaotic but also controlled at the same time.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
And
that is
it's
the nature.
anti-linear, it's anti-linear, it's anti-rules, but it's also not in discipline. Because a lot of times people think free jazz or freedom, or they think it's a very, very positive form of sorcery. That's the way I look at it. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about jazz, we think about ensembles, and basically,
Yeah,
as a
that's a
jazz
Western
musician,
concept. Like I'm not talking bad about Miles Davis, but the guys that wear suits, and also the music has a lot of structural. Like Miles Davis music has a lot of classical music structural. It's not as free as Malopo or Malombo. Continue. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, but the thing that you do is that you compose your music and you present it to a group of other artists who you entrust with the ability to sort of transpose it, to take it to other levels that you hadn't thought,
Yeah,
and
that's what
that's been
Coltrane
my
did.
experience.
That's what Coltrane did. Used to do
Yeah,
Coltrane.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's also been my experience with
Also,
sort of
sorry,
spending
the
time.
American who did it better than anybody was Coleman with Ornette Coleman with Don Cherry and Hayden. That was a Democratic team. Continue. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have to think about, when we look, because every time you listen to a quintet, and this is always sort of like occurred to me in my head, that each one of those five people playing on the bandstand all have compositions in their heads, and they all have
But the
their own
community,
sort
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
can
yeah,
I say
they
one more
all,
thing? So that's kind of like collective improvisation in Louisiana in the 1930s, where Louis Armstrong and Sidney Bechet, they all start playing, and when they start playing, they're different compositional styles of music. It sounds disparate, but the more they play together, it goes type what you say. There's a central, like the guy in West African music who plays the gong. There's a central spirit which now brings them together and brings all the complexity of their different styles into a unified view, which is what I hear when I listen to Diani with McGregor and other guys. Continue. Sorry. Thank you for that point. Yeah.
yeah. So this is kind of like the pluriversality that like I'm trying to sort of lead us to when we're thinking about South African culture, like Black consciousness culture, because
Yeah.
it's, I mean, it encompasses Blackness as a whole, as a,
Yeah.
um like, as I was saying, like, as a hive mind,
Yeah.
and
And I would
and
add one more thing. The music took on to never levels when the South Africans started going to Europe and listening to classical music. They didn't subvert themselves to that music. What they did was they now incorporated it into their central music, and then the music becomes more universal and world-like. Kind of like when Zim played with that guy
yeah,
from Denmark. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead,
yeah, I
continue.
think Johnny Gianni says it best in this interview with Kaganov, that when they went to Europe, they had been listening to these guys, they had been listening to Coleman. They had, because American music was well spread out, so they
Also,
had practiced.
they had been listening to Bach and Beethoven too. These guys were listening to everything.
Yeah,
Continue
yeah,
before,
no,
yeah, continue.
exactly. This is my point, that they
Yeah.
had checked, they had checked classical music. They had checked American classical black
Even
music.
American boogie woogie, American pop music too. Continue. Yeah.
Um, but the thing that gave them an edge was that they had the South African idiom
Yeah.
that
Very
no one
quickly,
had
very quickly.
listened to and
I'm
studied.
going to pause you for 2 seconds. That idiom is polylingual, polysyllabic, polytonal, polyrhythmic, and everything. And that's the basis, which is why they always tell you need to start an instrument when you're 8. A South African who can start playing the saxophone at 22, like Zim, and master it very quick because they're only navigating the instrument. They're not using the instrument as the primal thing. It's their soul. Continue. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I
yeah,
went on a
man.
rant. I must be on mushrooms today. Continue.
Yeah. Um,
Actually,
so
funny,
yeah,
I
man.
have a
So
wine. It's called Open Skies. So maybe
is it?
my brain is open to more.
It's
So
opening the
continue.
skies of
So
your mind there.
yeah, so here's let's go back to what you said. I want to put you back on track because I cut in front of you. Sorry. You said that when Diani went there, they had already been
Yeah,
listening to those types of
they,
things. Yeah.
they yeah, they were saying that they had already checked
Yeah.
all this work out, and they had this dynamic of like understanding certain local rhythms and bass lines and things like that. Um, and actually, they could hear, what he says is like he could hear rock and understand it by understanding batanga, you know,
Yeah, well, rock is a
for
trance music. It's a
example.
trance music, and it's a blues based music.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
continue.
So just
Yeah.
just as an example, that he could
Yeah.
cross pollinate those things,
Yeah.
um, and sort of infuse them into his music
Yeah.
and into his jazz.
I think it's a psychic
Um,
thing too, because South Africans, I always say this, they are originally from Central Africa and they migrated down. We need to realize that it's not just about biology or culture. There are psychic imputations in which you are part of a long generation of musical healers who started from the Central African forest. Continue. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So all these things sort of then culminate into what we can sort of think about as a Black consciousness aesthetic.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at the visuals, and you look at
Yeah.
the music, and I think what actually got us into this conversation was that when you were speaking with Rez, you were saying, if anyone is playing music in the same vein that Zimlawana is playing music, then you're playing spiritual music. You're sort of um,
Yeah.
transmitting the same spirit that Zimlawana was transmitting when he was playing, and
Yeah. And I truly
actually,
believe that nothing that I do or say, or nothing that you will do or say, or nothing that we do as artists that we created, we're just mediums. We're just mediums. Continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the other thing actually that led me to Harry Muyaga actually yesterday was
Mhm.
um
Send me his name on how to spell it because I'm gonna do more research. Continue. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You might find some things, but you might also, struggle to find stuff.
Yeah, you know what that's
um
about. You know what that's about. Yeah, continue.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
difficult.
so
Yeah.
so I mean, it's part of this process that I'm a part of, and that I'm enthralled in, that we're trying to gather all these things.
Well, we're trying
And
to excavate. Yeah. This is
yeah,
what we're
yeah,
doing. Actually, is actually anthropology. Also. Yeah. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, and make sense of it.
Yeah.
And I was asking Lififi about this particular album cover that I saw of Ezra Ncukana,
Make sure you write
who
down
I
these names.
think
I'm gonna go through this video to Ezra. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, 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 who I think also played with the Blue Notes um at some point, but he was also
Oh yeah.
uh like based in Cape Town, um and or he was based in the Eastern Cape. He was born in the Eastern Cape. in what used to be called Port Elizabeth, which is now Gqeberha.
Okay, thank God they
And
changed the name. Yeah.
yeah, 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 and he also interacted with the likes of Chris
Who was that drummer
McGregor,
that played with Gianni in his trio? That drummer is bad, man. Feza. Yeah. Is it Fez?
Mongezi Feza.
That guy is bad, man. Very good.
Yeah,
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 really
yeah,
good
yeah,
shit, man.
Mongezi Feza.
You see, I did my homework.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I
yeah,
said we need to meet. I told you we need to meet at 1 instead of 11 because I was tired. I stayed up till 4 in the morning doing the research. This is
yeah,
cultural
yeah,
work.
yeah.
Continue. Yeah. Yeah. Continue. Yeah.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so when I looked at the cover, I was like, no man, I need to find out
Do you have it
who
with you? Do you have the cover here with
who
you? Yeah.
this cover.
The
Yeah,
picture of it.
I've got it. I think I've got it here somewhere. Let
Yeah.
me try and open.
If you have time, put it there. Yeah. I want to say thank you very much
Um,
to you because you've added so much information, not just about Lewis Hamilton, also about art.
yeah, no, man. I think
I always
it's
tell
just
people that
maybe.
a lot of people tell me I'm not serious because I joke, but I'm actually the trickster spirit, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Trickster spirit is
Yeah,
important
yeah, yeah.
in Yoruba culture. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, here it is.
Oh
Um,
wow. It looks like a
um,
nose, but also
and
like
this
breast.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You think you know me.
It's a
Yeah.
face. Um,
It's a face, yeah.
well,
Is
like
that
a
for the song that goes
confluence of
da da
faces.
da da da
It's a
da
confluence
da
of
da?
faces.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the song. That's the song. You think you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
me.
Yeah, see,
So Ezra Ncukana,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, played this song in the 80s, or I can't
Yeah.
remember
It's a
when
very
this
beautiful
album was
song.
from.
And Zim also plays it too on
Um,
his Zim quotes it
yeah,
on his own album. Yeah. Yeah.
and Zim quotes it as an epilogue.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, in Zymology. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you can see how then all these kinds of
Are
narratives
connected. Yeah.
connect.
This is a very organic and very
Um,
connected. Yeah.
yeah, how all these things connect. I would have been interested also to hear what kind of music Hirimuyaha was playing, because he was a saxophonist as well.
Okay.
Um, so I'm not sure if there is any music of his that has been recorded or anything like that,
We have to do
that
some
we
research.
check out. But it would be interesting to hear
Yeah.
what kind of stuff he was playing and what he was into.
Yeah,
But
I want
just
to take a
looking at,
divergence because these people that are artists are multifaceted. Like when this guy Basquiat, he was not a musician, but a lot of times he would pick up the saxophone and he would just flow with his own rhythm or whatever. And it sounds like
yeah,
chaos. But
yeah, yeah,
my point being is that there's no distinction. And to me, that's why one thing I've noticed about South African artists and musicians, they're multi-talented. Like Rez. Rez does sculpture, he does DJing, he does he can also write well. So it's almost like very gifted people with spiritual gifts, and everything is interchangeable. Continue. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, man. There's always all those exchanges in terms of cultural development, of the Black consciousness aesthetic,
yeah,
that we can look at and borrow from.
yeah. So,
Um,
so very interestingly, because who started? Where do you think Black consciousness started? Did it start with Garvey, or be it before that?
shoot. um,
No, he was Pan
I,
Africanism. He was Pan Africanist. So
he
it
was
started
Pan
with Biko.
Africanist. Yeah, I
That's
think it was
different.
Pan Africanism. But
So
I, but I, but
Biko started Black consciousness.
yeah,
Oh,
I think Biko is the first that we get the sort of the term Black consciousness from,
yeah, but where are its
but
etymological
but I'm
roots?
not
Not etymological,
sure
but where
about.
are its conceptual? Where are its vital roots? Yeah,
I think, I
maybe
mean,
Nkrumah or somebody. I don't know. I don't know.
no,
But Nkrumah was
I
more
think
political. He wasn't about Black consciousness. So I'm trying to figure out where
yeah,
this
but
came.
I
I
think
think it
you
might have
can
come
take
from
it.
the Black Panthers or someone too. I don't know who. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can take it as far back as you want. Um,
Not Turner. Let me stop. No, not Turner's not black consciousness because he's violent. Black consciousness
yeah, but you can, I
is
mean, you can take it all the way back to negritude. You can take
negative.
it back to
Senghor. So I think, and I was thinking about
um,
Senghor. Yeah,
who's that lady? Sojourner
Surgeon of
Truth.
Truth. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what is documented, you
But
know.
I think it was a very good thing that Biko read these things and learned these things because it has its ultimate expression in South Africa, in which I'm not trying to compare different parts of Africa, but South Africa has a lot of complexity. It had the Communist Party, it had Europeans, it had people from India, it had people from Malay, it had San. So it's the perfect place of eclecticism in which to bring out the perfect balance of Black consciousness. When we think of Black
Yeah,
consciousness, sometimes we think of it too much politically because of Biko, but it goes deeper than that. It's to the roots, and it
but
combines the
this is why
political.
this is why we're having this conversation about
Yeah, yeah,
um, you know, I mean, we go back again to Cabral,
yeah. Cabral. I
and
was thinking about him and Sankara,
and
but especially Cabral. I
and
love
return to
Cabral.
the
Yeah,
source.
yeah.
You and returning to the source.
So I think we
Um,
also have to give a special shout out to Senghor. Yeah, a very beautiful
yeah,
guy,
yeah,
and
yeah.
also the guy who was the guy from Senegal who did the proper studies on where Egyptology and all that, and where Africans came from. What's his name? Uh, the Senegalese anthropologist
Chef Anta Diop.
Sheikh Anti Diop,
Yeah,
guys like that. Continue. Sorry. Yeah.
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 No, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, then the idea of the awareness of our blackness comes with perhaps um, the awareness of or the creation of whiteness, right?
Yeah.
As a phenomenon, as a
Yeah.
racial dynamic.
Which is also a
Um,
fiction because even black is a fiction, but we have to define ourselves like that because of our oppression, which comes back to the end of the day, which
yeah,
is
this
Africanism and
is
humanism. Yeah. But we
yeah,
are
this is
black.
where I'm
The reason
saying
we're
like
black is because we've gone through death. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm saying this is where black consciousness then would come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just so happens that Steve Biko through his studies and through the many conversations that he had, even with some of these guys that we're talking about now, he
Yeah.
was able to articulate
And very quickly, like just like
the
Zim,
idea of
who
black
plays instruments
consciousness.
as an activist, I always think of Biko as a doctor. He's more than a doctor. Fanon was supposed to be a psychiatrist, more than a psychiatrist. You can't, and this goes back to that video you sent me. Don't let anybody put you in a conceptual box. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no. Of course, it is always about breaking those bounds and those
Yeah.
boxes
Yeah.
that come with this colonial mentality,
Yeah.
right? Because those
And
are the
also a
boxes
Western
that
mentality which tries to put things into discrete, concrete places, which is why we
yeah,
see in
yeah.
America,
It's
which is why we see in America you have a president with dementia and a narcissist who's almost shot, a society which is like Rome, which thinks that things are linear and structural and contained. You can't contain the spirit, and it will lead to chaos. Continue. Yeah. And what
yeah,
I see
yeah,
Malopo and healing as is that you give up and you die and you fall into the ocean, and that's where life and light come out. Continue. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. This is where you then have this challenge of wanting to say um another interesting musician maybe that we can mention that comes in the line of pianists maybe just before Andile Nana would be Bekim Seleko,
Oh
who
yeah,
was
you mentioned him. My favorite song of
yeah,
his is "All for One, One for All," da, 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 da,
yeah.
and the age of inner knowing, and that was what we're going to talk about. So we're running out of time. I think that
No, yeah, I'm just making a
yeah, but no, we're going
mention.
to
I
continue.
don't
No, I'm going to have you continue. What I wanted to state about Msaleko is that the music that we play for him is very structurally jazz. So I'm not sure if it's any longer Malopo, but you can see that he's coming from a tradition. So I think it's far on the spectrum in which it almost becomes like classical music. Tell me your thoughts. I hope you disagree with me. Continue. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, man, I mean the fact that a musician is classically trained means that they will use the instrument in a classical way.
Yeah, yeah.
But what influences them from a black consciousness perspective is spirit. And
Yeah,
therefore, I
and
mean,
thank you for
there's,
saying that. Just thank you
yeah,
for
yeah,
saying
I
that.
think, yeah, I think there's like his album Meditations. If you listen to Meditations, I think it's like a 30-minute long,
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
a
listened to
30
the
minute
more
long
popular
medley.
ones, like the one that has the Age of Knowing and all those ones. Yeah, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
continue.
if you listen to that, he does a very similar thing to what Johnny Gianni is doing with his voice and all those
So
things
he's
while he's
also a
playing.
vocalist. Every South
I
African
mean,
musician is a vocalist,
yeah,
just like
he
every
uses
true
his
black
voice.
musician
He
is a
was also
vocalist.
a saxophonist as well.
Yeah,
He
I've seen him play saxophone and piano.
yeah, he
So,
also
and
played
this goes back to
saxophone.
where
So,
South Africans are multi instrumentalists. Continue.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the point that we were making, that
yeah, yeah,
that we don't necessarily always fit into a mold of saying, no, this is what you are, this is what you're not.
yeah.
Lefifi Chadi
Lefifi does
also
that to an extreme. Lefifi is an activist. He's a painter. He's
exemplifies
a
that,
musician, a writer. Yeah, yeah,
as a visual artist, a writer, and a painter.
yeah.
So that is not so much like, I mean, it's part of the African tradition of a creative. The
Yeah,
creative creates in all forms that he is able to.
yeah. And also, I
In
think a
all
creative sees that things that we call different are actually the same thing. Yeah. So, for
exactly,
example, going back
exactly.
to me, the piano and the guitar and the drum and the human voice, they're actually the same thing. They
Yeah,
just, yeah, continue. Yeah.
it's the instrument. You use various instruments to
Translate. Yeah.
transpose
Yeah.
and
And we're going to go back to what you were saying about transposition too, but that'll be the
yeah,
next
yeah, yeah,
episode.
yeah, no, to transpose ideas and thoughts
Yeah.
into artistic forms or
Yeah.
cultural forms that communicate certain things, certain ideas, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the idea had always been, um, with what the artists were doing, in my perspective, to sort of like break the mold, and move beyond these confines, because apartheid by definition had tried to confine them into
Yeah.
spaces, had tried to confine them into, and especially now when we speak about the visual artists, there was this idea of like township art, um, because all black people lived in a township, but it doesn't mean if you lived in a township and you made art, then your art was ergo township art,
Yeah, it's a bunch of
and
rubbish.
and, and,
It's
it,
like
and it
telling
is
somebody from
actually kind of
Holland.
like a,
It's like telling a white person from Holland that your art is the neighborhood you live in. And this is what we try
exactly,
to do.
exactly.
When white people don't write movies and songs about being white. They write it about being human. But we don't want to give awards to our black writers unless we write something that, oh, I am black and I was oppressed. Bullshit. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this goes
So
back to you, what you said. You are not, you are a humanist. And one thing I've noticed about you is that you don't take this separation in which I'm different from white people. You're a humanist and you're trying to project your humanism on everybody and make all of us agree to it. Continue. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, man. So this is what sort of the grander awareness, um, that that brings us to, I think, what was articulated nicely by Prastiv Kwena Mukwena of the African Freedom Station,
Yeah, is that
when
quickly? Is that thing back up again? Is Does he have his
yeah,
voice
yeah,
back up?
yeah. Well, I think we'll also sort of like touch on the
Oh yeah,
African Freedom Station,
next
in one
time.
of
Yeah, you got to
the
get him on
coming
our show,
times.
man. And you also have to get some of our female representatives. I'm not trying to be sexist, but we need a more balanced approach. We
Yeah,
can't just
yeah,
have all
yeah,
guys on our show. I'm gonna. That's your task, young man.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also get him a
No,
credit, please.
yeah. So
Get him,
so
please.
so he
Yeah,
brought this adage to the conversation of the concept of beyond the mind of the oppressed. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
Very quickly
taking
before you
from.
continue, I'm going to requote you. It's not that we're trying to change our world. We want to end it as we know it and begin the new one after we die from our old selves. Continue. I'm not going to talk
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
It's on you now. Okay.
No, for sure. And that is the only way you get beyond the amount of the oppressed is if there is no oppression, and the only way there is no oppression is if the world as we know it ends,
It's
and
kind of
we
like
have that
Christianity.
oppression.
The roots of Christianity, which is humanistic, is not Judaic. It's sort of like dying and being reborn. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. I mean, someone was saying today when um I saw something on Instagram today where this lady who I think is Native American was saying something about how people think that if the world would be better if there were no human beings. The way you make the world better is if you
Yeah,
erase
I
human
feel
beings.
like that, especially after I see what happened with
Yeah, yeah,
Trump and what
but
happens in Israel. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but she rejects it and says um, what it is that you need to do away with is the systems, because
yeah.
human beings are important. And when you look at um, indigenous cultures and people who work in tandem with nature and use their hands, these are people who can turn
Oh yeah,
deserts into
yeah.
forests, and you
And
know what I mean.
very quickly, going back, I always say this: South Africa does not belong to black people or white people. It doesn't belong to anybody. Human beings are caretakers of the land, and that's what the Native American spirit. We are here to caretake the land because it's part of nature. So I think human beings at our best, because we have language and analytical skills, we're supposed to be like Adam and Eve, caretakers of the garden, but it doesn't belong to us. We're using it for the beneficial of the cosmos and of the whole ecology. Continue. Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the question is not more who it belongs to, but who belongs to it.
That's a better word.
um,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah,
So
and
it's
I
our
think.
mother. It is our mother. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think when you put it that way, we can be a little bit less ambiguous about who belongs to it, because there is kind of like a dangerous ambiguity that comes with that has given us in South Africa this kind of rainbowist
Yeah.
narrative that
Yeah.
South Africa belongs to all those who live in it, and therefore,
No.
some in an Orwellian fashion, it belongs to some more than it does to others, and
Yeah.
some are more equal
So
than,
so
what I
I'll
mean.
use another word. South Africa is actually the light of the world. I'm not joking. My son said something to me which was crazy. My son was 6 years old, and he heard me listening to Zim. And he said, Dad, I think South Africa is the root of all poetry. I didn't teach him that. He said, I think I've written that on Facebook before. Also, my son one time said, when he was 5 years old, he said, Dad, I'm not afraid of God. I'm afraid of the men of God because God is nothing. He can't touch you, but the men of God can kill you if you don't believe in him. He told me that. That's ancient
So
wisdom. So he said South
yeah,
Africa is the root. So to me, South Africa is sort of like a cradle of civilization because we all know that the oldest traces go back to the South Cape by the beachside where the people were living, the San or whatever. And there are other parts of the world too. I think Mesopotamia is also a mother of the earth. So we're not just saying South Africa, but South Africa is one of those places which nourishes the world. And now it doesn't just belong to South Africans. South, South Africa is supposed to be one of the major parts of the world. I think Russia is too, because Russia is big and it has wheat, which is supposed to be the breadbasket of the world. Zimbabwe too. At one point, Zimbabwe produced enough food to feed the whole world. So it's fertile. So
yeah,
this goes more to matriarchy. Continue. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, man. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, like, move past this idea of belongings, because
Also,
this idea
the
of
idea of borders and flags and nations also
yeah, yeah,
continue.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But because also this idea of belonging has been used um to drive forward this idea, or
It causes
this
alienation and war.
movement.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, this movement of dispossession and alienation.
yeah.
um but yeah, but I think I think when we do look at it from this concept of beyond
I think you have to
oppression.
go to your word that you told me about, Quantu. I think that's the most important concept.
Yeah, I
Quantu.
think, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think maybe um we'll check out Ntutuzo's work in terms of what he terms as Ntu cosmology, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. This is good. Like, remember that
Because
book? I think we talked about it. Remember that book called Congo Cosmology?
the
Congo
Bantu
with a
Congo,
K.
yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
need to read that again. I'm going to read it. Do you have the book? Yeah.
Yeah, I have that
I have it.
book.
Okay. Okay. So
I
let's
still have that book.
close out now. We're gonna come back on Wednesday because as you see, this is not a 20-minute Formula One show. We could talk, we could do this for 3 hours actually. So
Yeah.
what last thoughts do
Um
you have? And then later on you can tell me where do you think we're gonna continue next week? Are we gonna go to Introduzo or are we gonna move on from the 70s or what? What are we gonna do? Yeah. Are you there? Yeah.
yeah, no. Yeah, I was just is this idea and this concept of like what black consciousness is supposed to do. I think it's similar to this idea of what womanism is trying to do in
You
terms
said
of
womanism or humanism?
womanism.
Womanism,
Wo-
yeah, okay. That might be a
yeah,
better word than
woman.
matriarchy because matriarchy sounds too patriarchal. Continue. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think the womanist agenda like is clear on the fact that it it aims to free everyone.
Yeah, like in
Once
Yoruba, Yamaya and Yamaja, all those types of things.
yeah,
The river and the ocean. Yeah. Yeah.
once the black woman is free, then everyone is free, right?
That's the truth. That's the truth. And
Yeah,
also the black
and
woman
then
has power. She has power. She's just not practicing it yet. Because no
yeah,
amount of
so
violence, no amount of male violence will make men suppress the female revolution because we know that we need females. and
sure.
and they have the power. It's just that they have to get out. Women have to break out of the patriarchal mind. I think females more than men support patriarchy because they don't realize the power that they have. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is where you sort of get to this concept of being beyond the mind of the oppressed, and from there then we can sort of imagine this new world, you know, outside of the chains and the bounds of dispossession and things like that. And then we can have a conversation about communal belonging and things like that. It's a little bit premature to have it now, but that is the future that I think even some of the black consciousness artists were saying when they were saying they wanted to liberate the mind, even the mind of the oppressor
Yeah. Different.
was
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that they were aiming to liberate from its
Well,
white
very
supremacy.
quickly, look at it. Look at it. There's a civil war in America going on between white people, in which I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but what gives you the right to try to kill somebody because you don't believe in their politics? The
In
U.S. is
their
falling
ethos,
apart.
yeah,
With the I'm not a
yeah. I
fan of
mean,
Trump. I'm not a fan of Trump. But what gives you the right to turn somebody into an animal? I can talk. Obama bombed Afghanistan and he destroyed Gaddafi. I'm not blaming him for it. But why is Donald Trump more evil than Obama? What gives you the right to dehumanize somebody and you think it's okay to try to shoot them in the head in front of everybody? It's wrong. And I think that the oppressor is in more pain than we are because you're now seeing the whites do to themselves. World War II, white people killed themselves up to 100 million. They think that they are unified, but they are not doing well with themselves. I'm not being racist. Let me not use the word white, but Western civilization is hurting European based people, and they don't realize that they are suffering. We have people like Zim. We have people like what's his name, Becky and Seleku. We have people like Cabral. Thank God that we have that, even though we've suffered. We're not seeing that in the European culture. And I'm not saying it's because European people are bad. They have been hijacked by imperialism. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. No, but I think, I mean, that sort of illustrates exactly where with this current world is leading us to, you know,
Yeah. It's a world without
and what.
womanism. It's a world without womanism. And even though I'm in favor of BRICS, have you noticed that every country in the world is dominated by businessmen? Putin is a businessman. Xi is a businessman. I'm not saying they're evil, but we need to get back to a more passive and less growth. For example, I don't need growth. What I need is food so we can have time together with family, even if we have a lower lifespan. What we need is more relaxation and less anxiety. Sorry, continue. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So this is kind of like the
Sorry, a
world
world
that
without
black.
ambition. A world without ambition. Continue. Yeah,
Yeah, this is the world that black consciousness is sort of thinking about and formulating when we speak about Ntu
yeah.
or Kwantu.
I just got your text. Thank you.
Um,
Continue. Yeah,
yeah. No, no, you'll check it out.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, that I think that is what the cultural movement in Azania, as we rightly should speak of it,
yeah. That should be the name
has
of the
been,
country too. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, has been about, you know, it's been about awakening minds
Yeah,
to to the humanity of, you know, rehumanizing those who have been dehumanized,
yeah.
um, without necessarily dehumanizing
And I also want to add
those
one thing. That
who have been
project
doing
is
the
going to be done by people of
dehumanization.
all races. So we don't want anybody on our show to think that it's only up to Black people. No, it's up to all humans because we know that race is a phenotypical expression of your environment. But what I think is more important is culture. And I'm going to go back that before Western civilization came, European cultures were also African because Africa is not about it's not about your skin color. It's about your intention. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
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 No, yeah, I think that is what I think we're speaking about when we speak about a humanist intention, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of what it means spiritually. I mean, then when we, I think maybe to sort of wrap it up, you know, when we zoom out from where we are in the
Yeah.
cosmos, we realize that uh, in the vast expanse of everything that is, um, here on this planet, us living amongst each other is all we have, you know, and we have to make it work with each other on this planet.
That's it. This is all we've got.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, as Carl Sagan put it, we're just like, you know, uh, a bunch of beings just hanging out on this
Yeah.
pale blue dot that
So
is
very
just
quickly,
suspended
you
in a
always talk
sunbeam.
about cosmology, and Carl Sagan was a physicist, but he talks about cosmology, and this is one universe. And Buddhism talks about the individual and the cosmos are the same thing in variation. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that is exactly it. Liberating this mind and liberating this human form,
Yeah.
is imagining a better universe.
Yeah, and I also call it imagining it, but imagining it validly. And to me, this is what Buddhism is, or spirituality is, or Malopo is, or voodoo is. It's not just arbitrary imagination. I think imagination has rules, but we have to go deeper into it. And I think at the end of it, we'll look at humans. And at the same time, we're going to realize that we're also one with plants and other animals. And we have to find the best balance. Because no matter what, the unfortunate part about reality is that in order for you to live, you have to eat something. So I always think it's just as bad to eat a plant as to eat an animal because a plant is a living thing. But that's the tragedy of existing on this world. So once things like mushrooms, I'm not talking about the mushrooms as drugs, but I'm talking about the plants. Once you realize that there is no death and no beginning, it starts to release the anxiety about how the circle of life works. We don't need to push the circle of life to the point where you kill somebody because you feel you need to have an extra 2 pounds of bread. You get my point. We need to take a better look.
Yeah,
And I think we need to start looking more in our society into vegetarianism and into looking into our ecology because I think that certain types of plants, you can't kill them. even when you separate the plant and you eat it and you ingest it, those particles and things. You see where I'm heading to, right? So I think that
No,
part
no,
of what
no. I
you're
hear
saying
what you're saying.
pushes towards veganism and vegetarianism. This is a wild transfiction. But I think that as long as, like, for example, I eat meat. As long as I eat meat, I can't complain about what white supremacists do to me because I'm also doing it to animals too. I think we need to cleanse ourselves of the world as we know it. I'm going to let you finish off today. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think this is then it moves our conversation of what we've been saying in terms of the idea of social justice when you put it like that to like a more expensive, like
Yeah, because this is a universe.
level.
It's a universe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially now that we've taken it to cosmic proportions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it speaks to also how even we envision traveling this vast expanse. The amount of debris that we sort of leave
Because, yeah.
out in space.
There's a lot of healing to do, a lot of healing, which is why
Yeah,
at the
so
same
so
time,
there's
we're
there's
activists.
all those things
Yeah.
that hopefully once we start to reimagine ourselves anew and afresh, we would be able to innovate even some of these technologies that are a little bit kinder to the universe and to space.
Yeah, yeah. And I like what you said, a
Um,
little bit kinder, because no matter what, there'll always be violence because all of us have to survive. Even to me, even eating plants is violence, but there's nothing we can do about it. But once we get into some plants might be wise and realize that we're like we say that there's actually only one consciousness in this world. And once you realize that there's one consciousness in this world, nothing ever dies. But you try to limit the suffering and the violence. I think I'm going to end on that.
yeah, but I think even us, we're consumable by the earth,
Yeah, that's
right?
which is fine, and that's fine with
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think for me, what a plant does that is quite smart is that it creates a fruit so that you eat the fruit and you take the seed and you plant the seed.
Yeah,
I know I remember someone was telling me that there's some trees that if the seed just falls on the floor, it'll die out. But if a bird comes and eats that fruit and then digests the seed and then
yeah.
shits the seed out,
And it comes out.
then the, then
So
the tree will
so this
grow.
this is the ultimate.
You
I think what you just described is nirvana. Once you get to nirvana, you realize that it's one self-sustaining system. But because of our
Exactly.
attitudes and imagine, so I think what Quantu and Mo- Black consciousness and Malopo is to change the way we look at reality to deal with it better. Because a lot of what we see, what we believe, is actually illusion.
Yeah.
So, for
Yeah.
example, I will never die. Now, my body will die, and Mustafa Janata will die because that's that's a psychic identity, which is the split consciousness of consciousness. But consciousness will
Sure.
never die. But the more that I, as an individual, learn that, the less anxiety I have, and the better it helps me interact with everybody else. So I think the ego is important for locations within the universe, but we have to let go of the ego to a certain level and realize that when I say I'm actually saying you too, because at the conscious level. But there's two
Yeah.
levels of
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
I can mean consciousness, or I can mean consciousness as this specific psyche location. You know what I'm trying to get at? Yeah.
Sure.
Man, we've
Sure.
got
Sure.
the
No.
man, we started out. This is the craziest show. It's been almost like an hour. So I'll let you finish and you'll also close us out. And we're gonna continue on Wednesday with the rest. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. No, man. So yeah, I think maybe in terms of like looking at culture, and aesthetics, um, and what uh, I think I always quote Fifi because he's my closest teacher.
Hmm.
He speaks about this idea of consciousness, um, of art being a vehicle to elevate one's consciousness. Right?
Okay.
He says to to quote him directly, he says art is a vehicle that one can use to elevate the senses.
Okay.
Right? That's the purpose of art. The purpose of art is to elevate the senses.
Yeah.
And in actual
I can tell
fact,
he's read a
if
lot of Buddhism. Because I don't like
yeah,
to
and
separate I don't like to separate senses from consciousness, but That's a debate.
Yeah, no, 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 no.
That's a
I
debate
don't think.
For our Buddhism show. No, I'm
Yeah,
agreeing with him though. Yeah, yeah, I'm
yeah, I
agreeing with
don't
him
think
though.
we're separating it from consciousness. But what informs consciousness are the senses,
Yes,
right?
and that's the
So
paradox
the
because
more
what's the
elevated
vehicle?
your senses
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
the more sensitive your consciousness is.
yeah.
And this then means, actually, as he puts it, he says, like, in the grander scheme of things, art itself becomes, works on making itself obsolete, because once you've listened to Coltrane's expressions and you've understood it, um, the next best thing that you can do is sit next to the ocean and just listen to the ocean.
What you've
You
just
know,
described is what nirvana is supposed to be. It's an
exactly.
idea, and we just try to move as close to it as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So once your eyes
Keep talking. I'm going to the
is,
restroom, but I'm listening. Keep talking. Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm gonna close it up while you're gone.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
but
No, I'm here.
but
I'm with
once
you.
you,
Finish it off. I'm here with you. I'll hold it.
but yeah, but once our eye is opened, then you'll be able to see,
That's
the beauty
enlightenment.
of,
Yeah, enlightenment.
yeah, the
Yeah.
beauty of the sky, or of the flower.
Yeah.
And therefore then your mind is open and your consciousness is liberated.
Thank you.
And
So we're going
that's
to end that,
the
and I want to
goal.
thank
Yeah.
you very much. So we're going to continue because on Wednesday I'm off, and football is over. So we're going to continue with this, and we're going to try to go back to the visual and to some of Malopo, but we're going to continue with the cosmic. As usual, this is improvisation. I want to thank you very much. I'm going to call you in about 2 minutes after we end the show to talk about something. Then we'll talk more. Thank you, Loretta. How long did
um,
we talk today? For an hour or so? An hour
I
and
don't,
15?
an hour and a half, an hour 40
Wow.
minutes.
And we did it free. This is not Formula One. This
Yeah.
is Community TV Africa. But more importantly, we're continuing our Black conscious movement, in which guys like Lafifi and Zim and so many people, Cabral, are part of. We want to thank everybody. So stay tuned, and I'll be back. I'll get in touch with you very soon, Lorato. Thank you. Okay.
Away, away.
Okay.